Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
All right, welcome to Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I am Jay Croucher here with Lawrence Jackson Jr. And Matthew Berry. We're going to talk about Conference Championship weekend, review both games. We'll talk about some of the coaching updates as well. We'll have pickup lines at close. And, of course, we will look ahead to Super Bowl 60 in a couple of weeks. There is, though, one aspect of this, which is that Matthew is playing hurt. Sam Darnold needs a couple of weeks for his oblique to heal. Matthew Berry will also take those couple of weeks for his voice to heal. How are you feeling, Matthew?
I'm a little under the weather. I feel like it's going around. I'm surprised you're not sick, either of you, honestly, because I feel like that's what happens when you have kids, right? They go to school, they play, they get sick, they bring it home. So it's kind of gone through my household. I'm glad we are remote today as we change over the studio. The reason we're not in studio in beautiful Stamford, Connecticut at the happy hour set as normal is that they're changing it over for our Olympics coverage on NBC and Peacock and, of course, all the NBC channels. So that's exciting. I wonder if like Scott Hansen will be there in front of the NFL Blitz video game or if they'll truly change it all over. Anyway, but that's why we're not there. I'm not doing great. We'll see how long my voice lasts. But of course, couldn't miss the last show before we are on the road for the Super Bowl. We're headed to Santa Clara.
Absolutely. No Connor Rogers today. He was so elated by the Bo Bichette Mets signing that he called out today. It's the victory tour goes on for Connor and his Mets, but we'll get stuck into everything regardless. Just on the sickness point, people sometimes ask me, like, what's the most surprising aspect of being a parent? And I always tell them, so I'm sick 35% of the time. Like, I'm just in a constant state of revolving health back to sickness. But anyway, let's get into these conference championship games. We'll start off with the one that was the more compelling of the two, I think, which is Rams Seahawks. And Lawrence, I think the big story out of this was just that Sam Darnold, he exercised the ghost, exercised the demons, and he delivered on the biggest stage possible.
Yeah, Jay, and to be honest, man, we can no longer say the things that we used to say about Sam Darnold, regardless of how the Super Bowl goes. He went in a shootout against Matthew Stafford, actually 2 times straight in a row when these teams played, going in a shootout with a Matthew Stafford who's probably going to win the MVP, and you knew the Rams were going to keep throwing their shots that second half, and you know they were going to keep coming. Sam Darnold held this Seahawks offense up. He did not turn the ball over and probably played the best game of his career, all things considered. 346 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no turnovers. Just a great thing for the former number 3 overall pick from the 2018 draft that had Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Baker Mayfield. Sam Darnold is the first person from that class to get to a Super Bowl. So big congrats to him. And like you said, exercising those demons.
Yeah, I thought in a way the most remarkable thing of this game was not that Darnold played the way that he did, but because he had to play that way. Otherwise, they were going to lose. Yeah. We thought that there might be worlds where they're leaning on Ken Walker in the run game, and it's largely the defense that carries it, and Sam Darnold can kind of, to some extent put on the Trent Dilfer 2000 Ravens costume and manage this game. That wasn't the case at all. The Rams averaged 8.3 yards per play. It felt like they were getting a first down on every play, and they almost were because they're averaging 8.3 yards per play. The Seahawks had no answer whatsoever for Stafford for the second game in a row. The pass rush wasn't really getting home. I believe Stafford was sacked 1 time total across the 3 matchups between the Rams and the Seahawks. So the fact that the Seahawks couldn't get pressure, the fact that the Rams were able to create separation so quickly with Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams going up against the weak links of the Seattle defense, which are their boundary corners, going up against Job and Tariq Woolen, who was almost one of the great villains in Seattle sports history for the worst 60 seconds that any athlete has had in 2026 to date. But the fact that Stafford was able to do all of that and play as well as he did meant that Darnold had to respond, and he did. And he did basically everything that you could ever expect of him, Matthew.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's really interesting here is people forget, like, okay, brilliant in this game, there's no question about it. But think about this. The two previous matchups of the Rams, just 2 touchdown passes, 6 interceptions. He had played poorly in the 2 games where he had faced this defense before. So for a third time, everything on the line, obviously, and Matthew Stafford absolutely slinging it for Darnold to play as well as he did is just kind of an awesome story. And here's my question, Jay. What do you think we hear more of now that the Super Bowl matchup is set? We've got 2 weeks with nothing to talk about but this matchup. So my question is, what do you think we hear more of? Like the Sam Darnold redemption story, Malcolm Butler, or Marshawn Lynch? That's my question for you over the next 2 weeks.
I think it's Malcolm Butler because, one, that is the most iconic Super Bowl play, I think, of the past couple decades. Certainly the one that comes to mind for me first. I think another funny thing is that it was Chris Collinsworth on that call for that play.
Yeah.
And I can still remember in my head Collinsworth yelling, I can't believe the call. I can't believe the call. They didn't run the ball with Marshawn Lynch. And now Chris Collinsworth calling his 6th Super Bowl, and it's the 5th one involving the Patriots, and the 2nd one involving the Patriots and the Seahawks. So as much as Pats Rams would have been fun as well, because Pats Rams started the Patriots dynasty 26 years ago or whatever, and then also we had the 2nd installment, which was not a great game. But now the fact that it is a Pats Seahawks redux, the fact that it's not just Sam Darnold exercising demons and ghosts, it's the Seattle Seahawks exercising demons from what was the most traumatic loss in their franchise history, and still just one of the most bizarre sequences ever, because the game, it looked like the Pats were going to win, and then it was Jermaine Kearse down the right sideline with the insane juggling catch.
No one talks about that. That's what's crazy, is that had they scored, had they given it to Marshawn Lynch, had Russell Wilson thrown a touchdown, whatever, had the Seahawks won, people would have talked about Jermaine Kearse's catch the way they talk about why am I blanking the name? Giants.
David Tyree.
David Tyree. Thank you. I don't know why I blanked on the name, but like one of the all-time great catches, Julian Edelman, right, against the Falcons, like one of the all-time great Super Bowl catches, and no one ever brings up the Jermaine Kearse catch because of what ends up happening, whatever it is, 45 seconds later, when instead of running it with Marshawn Lynch, Russell Wilson throws the slant and Malcolm Butler intercepts it. Patriots hold on to win. But in this particular game, and we'll have lots of time to talk about the matchup between the two Patriots and the Seahawks, I want to go back to this game here for a second, because do you guys have any concern about the Seahawks defense? To your point, Matthew Stafford lit them up. Now, there's 2 caveats here. Number one is that you're right. The Woolen, they get the stop, and then the bad taunting penalty, which keeps that drive alive. So if they don't do that and they get the punt, maybe the final score looks a lot different. And then the second thing here is that, again, they drove down. We can debate whether or not he should have kicked the field goal, but they were whatever, 5 yards away from a touchdown, and on 3rd and 4th down, Stafford just couldn't get it done. But I think any other time he probably does. And then, so my concern is that the great Seahawks defense at home gives up 27 points, easily could have been 34. I'm just curious, do you guys have any concerns about this supposedly vaunted Seahawks defense? Or is this just McVay and Stafford being brilliant?
I think it's more than that, because Matthew Stafford has been the only quarterback that's been able to light up this Seahawks defense like that. And you bring up that 3rd and 4th down where the Rams couldn't get in at the 5-yard line. That's where the Seahawks defense showed that they could step up to the test. And again, you bring up Tariq Woolen. He actually dropped the interception on that play, then had the bad penalty. Had he caught the interception, then had the penalty, they would have just been 15 yards from the spot of that, and the Seahawks still would have had the ball. So they could come up and make plays. I just think it's the Rams offense that's really been humming all year. It's hard to stop an offense when you got a guy like Matthew Stafford throwing 46 regular season touchdowns. I think when you put him in the matchup against the Patriots offense, now we got a whole different thing, because the Patriots offense hasn't been humming. Like, they're not like the Rams offense. They kind of win however you could get it, whether it be their own defense turning the ball over. So I think it'll be a very different matchup for the Seahawks going from the Rams offense, which is the best and most explosive in the league, to now going to the Patriots offense.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think that the thing too with the Rams that so often doesn't get discussed is that this year they've had arguably the best offensive line in football. The ability to keep Stafford in clean pockets has been so key to everything they do. And I think that for the Seattle defense, everything just compounds where they don't have this Seattle defense, which generates a ton of pressure. They don't have a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett to just absolutely wreck a great offensive line by themselves. And the Rams, the fact that they've been able to block the Seahawks and Stafford has been so rarely sacked in these three matchups, that has been compounded by the fact that Puka Nacua and Davante Adams have been able to get these matchups against, suspect outside corners. Devin Witherspoon is incredible, but the rest of the cornerback room is not really a strength of the Seahawks. And so I think the fact that Stafford has had time and the receivers have been able to separate quickly, that has been able to, undo this otherwise excellent Seahawks defense. Nick Emmanwori also is incredible as well when he plays corner, but he's not even really a cornerback because he just plays every position. But I think that when there is a weak link in an offense, McDonald is just going to hammer it. Like the San Francisco, the 49ers, their offense when Purdy has been there, statistically was pretty comparable to what the Rams did this season. And they scored 9 points in 8 quarters against the Seahawks defense. And so I think that this Patriots offense is not going to look remotely like the Rams offense. One, their offensive line is much weaker than LA's, and we saw the havoc that Will Anderson was able to wreak, that the Broncos defense was able to wreak upon the Pats, and also their receivers. They don't have Puka Nacua and Davante Adams. They have Kayshon Boutte. They have Stephon Diggs, Mack Hollins. These guys are not going to separate and destroy the Rams secondary, the Seahawks secondary like the Rams did.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the game coming up here in a little bit, but just to focus on the Rams here for a second, it's a shame because it's easy to second guess about whether they should have gone for 3 or kicked the field goal or not. It sort of feels like they probably should have there, but I also get wanting to be aggressive. It was sort of a shootout. You kind of hope your defense can get a stop there. And you feel bad. This has been made a lot of points, but in his 2 games against Seattle, right, both this one and the one in the late season, 831 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for Matthew Stafford, to your point, against these Seahawks. And Puka was all world, right? 9 for 165 and a touchdown. Davante Adams 4 for 89 and a touchdown. This is a crazy stat that was given to me. Davante Adams has played in 5 conference championships in his career. He has never won one. He's 0 for 5. Not that it's his fault, but I'm just saying, that's tough, man. That is tough. So I feel for Davante Adams, feel for Puka, feel for Matthew Stafford here, because the offense did everything possible to win. And the interesting thing about just, boy, oh boy. I mean, I don't know. I a lot of people are sitting here saying he should have kicked the field goal. I sort of get it. Your offense has been rolling. You kind of got, you got lucky there towards the end. You haven't really gotten a lot of stops. I don't mind going for it there, Jay.
Yeah. I think
Lawrence.
To me, I thought that was a no-brainer decision. There's under 5 minutes left in the game. The Seattle offense has been rolling. And here's the thing too, is that even if you want to look at it with the benefit of hindsight, the Rams didn't get into field goal position at the end of the game. So they just would have lost 31-30 had they kicked the field goal there. So I think that, look, you're averaging 8.3 yards.
But should they have, Jay, think about that for a second. Hang on, though. Should they have, on the previous touchdown, gone for 2, made it, in theory, 31-28?
Yeah, that to me is the mistake, is that you should have gone for 2 there. And I understand, in the moment, it just felt like these teams were going to stop. We're just going to keep scoring and scoring and scoring. But I think that was a mistake because they kicked the extra point to get to 31-27 in the third quarter. And you're thinking there's going to be all this scoring still to come. There was no more scoring for the game. And you just can't you can't count on the fact that you're definitely going to score a touchdown the rest of the way. So I think that was, particularly with just how dominant the Rams offense was looking, I think that that was the decision that McVay might have some regrets about. But Lawrence, other side of the ball, the other thing I'm going to remember from this game is Jaxon Smith-Njigba's first half, where he just turned the game completely on its head. And even though, Puka Nacua ended up having more receiving yards than JSN in the end, but JSN just really capped off a season where he's most likely going to win Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, definitely, and well deserved. That touchdown catch he had where he was damn near wide open, that turned out to be a huge play in the game for the Seahawks. But look, 12 targets, 10 receptions, 153 yards, and that touchdown I just spoke about. And it all ties hand in hand with Sam Darnold. He plays his best game of the season, of his career, really. And what do you know? He's throwing it to the best offensive player on that whole field. And that's a lot to say, considering you got Puka Nacua on the other side. That's the most reception yards ever by a player age 23 or younger this season, including the playoffs. So Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and looking forward, Jay and Matthew, I would actually, I'm a big value guy here, right? So when we talk about Super Bowl MVP, that's the guy I'm looking at, because we know that Jaxon Smith-Njigba can have this type of game, right, without Sam Darnold having the type of game that he had last night. Like, they could fully depend on Jaxon Smith-Njigba to win that game. And it says something when the defense so focused is to stop you first. See, on the Rams, you got Devontae Adams if you're going to strap up Puka Nacua. They don't really have that on the Seahawks. So shout out to Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who really doing well for the 2023 wide receiver draft class.
Yeah, I think the thing with JSN is that some people, and I agree with you, Lawrence, on the Super Bowl MVP angle, and we're going to talk about that market a little bit later. But I think that there has been a little bit of thought that he's going to get shadowed by Christian Gonzalez, so he's one of the best shadow corners in the league. It's like, I don't know. I don't think he can guard JSN. JSN absolutely torched Derek Stingley earlier in the season. I think that, one, he's too good, and then two, he's used in such a variety of creative ways. So much of his the deep bomb targets off of play action, the fact that they use him in the backfield as a running back in that alignment, which he scored the touchdown out of. So I think that JSN, I just think he's just totally unguardable. And I can't really remember a receiver quite like him, Matthew, where he kind of reminds me of Cristiano Ronaldo, where he's just like consistently on balance all the time. That is the thing that I think, like, he's balletic in the way that he moves. And I think, like, the one-handed catch, which, by the way, his second highlight one-handed catch against the Rams this season down the left sideline, because he had one in the first matchup in LA. But his emergence is obviously one of the defining stories of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word they used on the broadcast, which I thought was accurate, was he just glides. Yeah. It just feels like he just glides. His movement is so sharp, and his route running is so crisp. And, I'm gonna, Jay, I know there's many text chains that you have that I'm not a part of, that you always like to throw in my face. Well, I'm a part of the Football Night in America text chain. And so, right, you're not on that one. And, all the guys, like, I got Devin McCourty, and I got Tony Dungy and Rodney Harris and all the guys on that text chain, and Jason Garrett, et cetera, et cetera. And, people are just blown away by the route running and the precision of Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I don't know. I mean, I think Christian Gonzalez is really good, but, he got burned a couple of times. Like the one big play of the Broncos, and we'll get to that game in a second, but I believe Gonzalez was on Mims, right? On the big play, the one big play in the first half. I could be wrong on that, but I feel like he got burned one time. When he got burned pretty bad, at least one time in that game. In the Broncos Patriots game. I could be wrong on that, though. I'm drugged up on cough syrup, you have no idea. I am high as a kite right now on over the counter cough medicine, for the love of God.
The Patriots, though, they actually have a nice whole stable of cornerbacks.
Sure.
Outside of Carl, I'm sorry, you also have Carlton Davis, then you got Marcus Jones in the slot there. So they're good. I can't imagine.
For all the talk of Drake Maye, the Patriots are in the Super Bowl because of their defense. There's no question about that.
Yeah, 100%. They got young guys that simply just fly around, and that's what they've done this whole playoff. Now, albeit they haven't went against the best stable of quarterbacks on their way here, but at the end of the day, you did that's exactly what you're when you see Jarrett Stidham, that's what you do. Now you're facing a different animal now in this new Sam Darnold, who's ready to go, who can play in these big game situations. So now
we hope so.
And just like you mentioned, Matthew, Marvin Mims, that guy for the Seahawks will be Rashid Shaheed. That's the guy who will be liable to burn any defensive back that the Patriots have to offer.
And I'm being told in my ear, by the way, from producer Adam, that I'm correct, that yes, it was Gonzalez that got burned by Marvin Mims on that 51-yard catch in the first quarter. So I don't know. It's really interesting, this matchup, and we should get to Patriots Broncos at some point here. But the two teams are so fascinating, right? Because Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a superstar. There's no question. And he will be a first-round draft pick next year in fantasy drafts. And he, in my opinion, was the fantasy MVP this year because of both his production and his ADP, where people were not sure about Sam Darnold, not sure about this offense, Clint Kubiak, everything like that. It's going to be really interesting. I feel like I don't hear enough Clint Kubiak for head coach talk. And I understand because he's now head of the Super Bowl, but just doesn't feel like he's getting the buzz that some other offense coordinators have been getting for potential head coaching jobs, which is weird given the job that Clint Kubiak has done this year. It's been nothing short of phenomenal. Here's my question, though, guys. So you've got JSN, but then you've got, Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, AJ Barner. It's like there's a superstar wide receiver, and then there's and then you've got Stephon Diggs. And it's not a Super Bowl. It's not, Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, I guess, is my point, right? I mean, Shaheed is a really nice player. Kupp obviously has his moments, but it's interesting wide receiver group in this Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the thing with JSN is that all year we have thought about why don't teams just do what Brian Flores did to JSN, where it's basically all right, you're seeing 2-3 guys every single play and make the other guys beat you. And I think that the nature of this Kubiak offense is that you don't necessarily get to play like that because so many of JSN's targets come off of play action. That's such a big part of how he accumulates, particularly the deep passes. But yeah, no, good, Matthew, that you were correct on the Christian Gonzalez burn. That's a big win for cough syrup acid dreams. Very good that one was a correct call. Let's move to that game. Patriots Broncos, which was not nearly as compelling as Rams Seahawks, but visually compelling on the second half with all of the snow, but not a great game overall. And one of the reasons why is that Lawrence, the Patriots offense, was not really at the races, and they didn't have a backup quarterback in. They had Drake Maye, who's going to finish top 2 in MVP. And for the third game in a row, the Patriots offense did not look fantastic. Now they've gone up against 3 of the best defenses in football, and the Chargers, the Texans, and the Broncos in this playoff run. But how concerned are you that Drake Maye and the Pats, they weren't able to get it going, particularly in the first half before the weather really kicked in?
Yeah, I would be a little concerned because, like you said, Jay, they did play up against 3 of the best defenses in the NFL. But at the same time, that's 3 games in a row when you got a guy, when you got an offense that's led by an MVP candidate, you want to, in 3 games, you want to get something going. Not the case here for Drake Maye, 10 for 21, 86 passing yards. But the key here was the 65 rushing yards and was able to pick up those timely first downs, including the one on the Patriots last drive that did seal the deal. So that's always going to be in play for him, and that's going to be in play for Drake Maye in the Super Bowl. But going to that other side of this game, the Broncos, and we was just talking about the Rams going for it for 2, I 100% felt like the Rams, who again are the Rams with Matthew Stafford, should have went for it on 4th down. Sorry, not 2. They should have went for it on 4th down. That offense was going, right? On the other side, the Broncos had a chance to go up 2 scores early. They didn't do it, and in the play call to go for it on 4th down to put the ball in Jarrett Stidham's hands. Now that one was risky. That one I was scratching my head on, and it kind of bit them later down in the line, because that one turnover that Jarrett Stidham had, that really cost them the game. And there you go again, Patriots defense handling business.
I agree with you, Lawrence, that I think that it was the play call more than anything, right? It was the fact that I'm okay with the decision to go for it there. I understand that, they don't score again after that, and so it looks bad in retrospect, particularly given how the conditions set in. And there is one line of thinking that it's like, well, it's going to be so hard to score in the second half with the conditions that you have to take the points in the first half when you can get them. The other line of thinking is that we're so close to the end zone. 7 here is going to be so incredibly valuable because of how hard it's going to be to score in the second half. So I think ultimately I would have gone for it there. It's just that I wouldn't have had Jarrett Stidham roll out to throw a pass in that situation. I think that in that spot, you more rely on having one of the best offensive lines in football and being able to run the ball to get 1 yard. So ultimately, I don't think that the decision was egregious in either direction. I think both were defensible. It's just that it didn't work out, and it looked particularly bad the way that it didn't work out because, Stidham rolled out and almost threw a pick on the play, Matthew.
That's the point. I think the play call is the more egregious part here. I don't mind them going for it. I know a lot of people are saying, hindsight's 20/20. The thing that I think is interesting, I think he might have gotten the first down on 3rd down. I was very surprised. CBS showed one replay, just very, very quickly, one replay of him running out towards the sideline, and he slid, and they marked it short. I think would have been nice to get another look at that. I don't know what you guys saw, but it looked like he was pretty close to the first down. And honestly, if I'm Sean Payton to that point, given the fact that you're with a backup quarterback, you're a home underdog with a backup quarterback, I might have thrown a challenge flag there and said, hey, can we review that? It's the first half. Take a timeout. Take a look at it. Or even just take a timeout and see if replay assist bails you out or anything like that. I don't know. It was interesting, but it is weird that why not run even if you don't do it with Stidham, surely you got somebody there that can do a QB sneak, one of your, Adam Trotman or something like that, one of their bigger players there. That was the biggest issue, I think, is the fact that, the play call was so bad. One other thing that I will just say here, and this was something that was going on in the Football Night in America group chat that Jay Croucher is not a part of, is we were debating this back and forth. And the argument was that, some coaches are like, given the new kickoff rules, that you'd rather, if you don't get it, if you go for it on 4th down and you don't get it, you'd rather have the guys pinned there inside the 10-yard line or whatever it is, rather than having to kick off. You score 3, okay, and you kick off, and now the other team has the ball at the 30, 35, something like that. So, but what was interesting is that, and I don't, it's a private group chat, so I don't want to get into it, but some of the people on the chat that are former NFL players or coaches just talked about, and specific players but you don't understand what it means to the team to get stopped on 4th down. That there's just sort of a deflating nature of that. Versus, hey, man, we drove down and we got points. Yeah. And I'd never thought about it that way, which I think is really interesting. That's right, that there's just sort of a momentum suck. And even though you can sit here logically say, okay, we're fine, but now they've still got to go 90-something yards to get a touchdown or get a score. But still, there's something deflating about, man, we were rolling, right? And you felt like, damn, I think the Broncos are going to win this game.
Yeah,
and they still should have, honestly.
Another point, I 100% agree with that fact about the not getting it on 4th and 1 is a big deflation for the team. But then your defense is playing well when the weather was better. So you certainly would have felt better about the defense when the weather got bad. So it's just, it's over now, but just seeing the final score 10-7, it's got to eat at them.
Yeah, they easily had a chance to win this game. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities there, a lot of interesting calls that just felt like every single bounce, every single call that could have gone either way all went towards the Patriots here. To your point about the Patriots offense, we can move now from this game to sort of a Super Bowl preview. But what's fascinating to me is that, Drake Maye has not been great in the playoffs. Right now, admittedly, he's played a bunch of good defenses, but 15 sacks in 3 playoff games. He is running for his life, literally. He's been able to use his legs fantasy-wise, right? 65 rushing yards in this one as well. But throughout the playoffs, he's been pressured on almost 40% of his dropbacks. And now he's got to go face another great defense in the Seattle Seahawks. So getting Drake Maye unlocked, Jay, and the other thing that's crazy to me is, where is TreVeyon Henderson? TreVeyon Henderson has just disappeared, it feels like, in this particular game. And I get that it was cold and they want to just kind of go with the hammer here. But, Ramondre Stevenson played 94% of the snaps. And I just feel like we haven't seen TreVeyon Henderson the entire playoffs.
Yeah, I think a big part of the TreVeyon aspect is that the Patriots have been nursing these 3 playoff games, all 3 of them, where they were playing with the lead against the Chargers. They were playing with a lead against the Texans, and Stroud was imploding on the other side. And then once they went up in the Broncos game, they were very much leaning on their defense to win that. And I think the fact that they didn't feel like they needed to create explosive plays or to score heavily to win these games, and they felt just more comfortable having the vet in Ramondre Stevenson, who they trust, which is ironic given his fumbling issues earlier in the season. But I think that it's more likely we see more of TreVeyon in the Super Bowl, just given that the Patriots are, 4.5 trending towards 5-point underdogs in this game. So they're going to have to score. But to me, Lawrence in the Super Bowl, and the opener on this is Seahawks -4.5. The total is 46.5. Seahawks -230 on the money line. So the market's saying that they're a 67-70% chance to win the Super Bowl. To me, the most interesting side of the ball is the Patriots offense, because Drake Maye, who I thought was outstanding with his legs yesterday. He scores the rushing touchdown. He was 10 for 65. He gets the third down pickup, gets the first down on the final play to ice it. But I think as a passer in these playoffs, he has really struggled. And I think that a lot of that is on his offensive line. And a lot of it is on the fact that, he doesn't have a Puka Nacua or a JSN who can create a ton of separation. But neither of those things are going to change between now and the Super Bowl. And the fact that Maye, particularly across the first 2 games, Drake Maye fumbled 6 times in the first 2 playoff games. And a lot of that was Will Campbell getting absolutely destroyed by Will Anderson. But still, you can't fumble 6 times in 2 playoff games. If he fumbles twice against the Seahawks, they're going to lose that game. The Seahawks are too good. So how do you think that Maye is going to go against the Seahawks defense?
Well, I have to trust himself in the pocket and trust himself when they get the pressure. Because although the Seahawks couldn't actually sack Matthew Stafford, they got close to him. But the thing about Matthew Stafford, this is a veteran quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He knows the game. Will Drake Maye, will he be able to consistently trust his eyes and his feet in the pocket and kind of not just, you got to know when to look to run and know when that pressure's coming, that, keep your eyes out. But then again, you keep your eyes downfield. Are your receivers getting open against these DBs? So it's going to be a struggle again. He's going to have some pressure. Again, they may not be able to sack Drake Maye like he's been sacked in those previous games, but the Seahawks are going to be coming. So it's going to be all about, can you make it where you could go shot for shot with this team, the Seahawks, much like the Los Angeles Rams were able to do that. Now, we know Stephon Diggs isn't the old Stephon Diggs, but he's still a 1,000-yard receiver at this age. And you talked about TreVeyon Henderson. We're going from cold, snowy Denver out to Cali. now. So TreVeyon Henderson is going to have to be more of a factor. I don't think they go so much for the battering ram with Ramondre Stevenson. So Henderson being a factor could help Drake Maye. And you just got to see it at this point. This will be 4 games in a row where the Patriots just don't get it going in the passing game if they can't do it against the Seahawks. So I expect better things out of Drake Maye in the offense.
Yep. Any lean, Matthew, early on Seahawks or Pats at the 4.5?
I took the Seahawks minus 4.5 as soon as it opened here. I'm a believer in the defense of the Seahawks, and a lot of people are going to talk about the offensive line, and rightfully so. I agree with Lawrence that you'll see more TreVeyon Henderson. I think you'll see more Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. The Seahawks have struggled against tight ends so far this year, so I could see that. It's interesting, right? You think about that Denver game. Like, if Jarrett Stidham doesn't make that unbelievably dumb, was it a forward pass, it's a backward pass, whatever, they recover, and then they should score quickly with a Drake Maye rush. And there was just not a great sequence. Without that turnover, like, they generated 3 points of offense. Like, it was not good. Now I agree with Lawrence. Like, it's going to be much better weather here, but I just think that you feel better about the Seahawks defense against the Patriots offense than you do against the Patriots offense against the Seahawks defense, if that makes any sense here. Give me, I'm nervous about the Patriots here. I will say this about the Super Bowl. I think I think there's a chance that one of these quarterbacks just completely melts down. To your point about Drake Maye with the 6 fumbles and being sacked 5 different times in 3 straight games, he has not been a great passer. And if they stay home and they don't let him get outside the pocket and use his legs, you could see like an epic bad performance from Drake Maye. That said, Drake Maye is my vote for MVP this year. And there's a definite chance that Sam Darnold, who, yes, was awesome against the Rams, but in other big games has had these meltdown games on big stages. And we've talked about this. This Patriots defense is absolutely for real. So it's weird. It doesn't feel like to me it's going to be a close game. Like, I picked the Seahawks. I wouldn't be surprised if, Sam Darnold also melts down and the Patriots offense gets rolling. Like, nothing would surprise me here. It's been such a weird year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that New England's chances largely hinge on leaning on their defense, which has been excellent, particularly since Milton Williams came back. When they are fully healthy, for them to create the ghosts that Sam Darnold once saw in Patriots uniforms on that Monday night game all those years ago. But I think that the conventional way for this game to unfold is that the Patriots offense really struggles, like they really struggled against the Chargers, Broncos, and Texans defenses. And the Seahawks defense is, in my mind, along with the Texans, the best defense in football. And I think that they may end up defining this game. I think they'll get pressure against the Patriots O-line. And I don't think that the Patriots wide receivers will be able to get separation the way that Puka and Devontae did last night. And so the bet that jumps off the page to me, in terms of, more game and total oriented, is the Patriots under 20.5 points. I don't see them getting to 21 against this Seahawks defense outside in Santa Clara. Quickly, before we go to break, the Super Bowl MVP market, Sam Darnold's the favorite at plus 130, Drake Maye plus 235. I agree with Lawrence. I think the bet is JSN at plus 550. That implies that he's about a 22% chance to win. If the Seahawks win, I think it's more than that. He would have won MVP in just about half of Seattle's wins this season. I think that Darnold wins MVP last night, but Darnold had the best game of his career, and JSN had like an above average Sunday for JSN.
But my only question about that is I agree with you. But on the other hand, often, I always go back to the fact that, on I forget which Super Bowl, but Damian Williams should have been the Super Bowl MVP, and they gave it to Mahomes, right? I think it was against the Niners. I think it was the first one against. And But like, they just don't, they generally, I know it has happened, but they generally like to give MVP to the winning quarterback more often than not. They have given it sometimes to defensive players and wide receivers and other players. But generally speaking, that if the Seahawks win, it means Sam Darnold played at least decently, right? He didn't melt down and he was able to get the ball to JSN. It's an unbelievable story. Obviously, everyone has talked about, how many teams that Sam Darnold has bounced around and everything like that. And he's finally, this is his second Super Bowl, but his first one as a starter that he's played. And if the Seahawks win, like, I just sort of feel like while JSN might be, quote, more deserving, feels like it's more likely that Sam Darnold would win the award, which is why he's at plus 130 versus plus 550. But I wonder if you think, as opposed to the Seahawks money line is minus 230. If you think the Seahawks win this Super Bowl, aren't you better off betting Sam Darnold at plus 130 than the Seahawks at minus 230?
Yeah, no, I get all that. The only things I would say is that one, JSN ain't Damian Williams. His pedigree is a lot higher. And then Fair. Two, I would say the parallel is Cooper Kupp in the Super Bowl, where Matthew Stafford was also an incredible story. His first year as a Ram after all those years in Detroit. But you're banking on, I think, basically Sam Darnold throwing one pick in this game to tarnish his stat line a bit, and JSN going berserk and accounting for 45, 50% of Darnold's yards, as he so often does. Anyway, we got to take our first break. When we come back, we will break down all the new coaching hires. All right, we are back with Rotoworld Player News, headlined by some news to warm Matthew Berry's heart. Mike McCarthy is back in all of our lives as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Matthew Berry, your reaction?
I love this. I'm super excited for it. I am so here for this. Look, I feel bad for Steelers fans. We have friends that are Steelers fans, but this is the universe, saying, hey, that fat security guard at Acrisure Stadium should not have been so rude to me. And so, what we're going to do, we're going to give you Mike Tomlin, just, disguised as Mike McCarthy. He's been, what's the difference between Mike Tomlin, who they were ready to run out of town, and Mike McCarthy, right? In the playoffs, he's 11-11, Mike McCarthy. He won one Super Bowl. That was in 2010. He's somebody that, basically gets you 8, 9, 10 wins a season, sometimes 11 or 12, but they will be a good to above average offense under Mike McCarthy. And they will fail in the playoffs. I've said this many times and I stand by it. No coach in the history of the NFL has gotten less out of more talent than Mike McCarthy. Whether it was, Aaron Rodgers, who might be the greatest quarterback to ever live. Like, we can talk about, forget the GOAT stuff, but just from a pure skills standpoint, Aaron Rodgers might be the greatest quarterback that ever lived. But he had peak Aaron Rodgers and all those years in Green Bay. And then he goes to Dallas, where he had a loaded team with Dak Prescott. And now he goes to a team that at the moment, maybe Aaron Rodgers comes back, but doesn't have the talent level that either of his previous two stops were. It's rare that you get a third chance at a head coaching job in the NFL. So, shout out Mike McCarthy. Fantasy-wise, all jokes aside, because I'm not a huge Mike McCarthy guy, but fantasy-wise, it'll be fine for the players we care about. DK Metcalf will still get his. We'll see who the quarterback is. Jalen Warren will be fine. Don't know if Kenneth Gainwell gets as much run, but maybe. McCarthy has generally been a multi-running back guy. He certainly was in Green Bay. Mike McCarthy is the inspiration behind Free Aaron Jones. When I started the whole Free Aaron Jones movement, it was because Mike McCarthy wouldn't play him. So, I'm thrilled about this just because I think it's funny. But I do feel bad for Steelers fans. And the last thing I'll say that is amazing is that the Steelers on their own official website, I believe this, but the Steelers basically acknowledge that they know fan reaction has been mostly negative. No, like Art Rooney II was basically like, I'm not trying to win the press conference, I'm trying to win games, but acknowledge that, yes, fan reaction overall has been fairly negative. Like, no one is excited about this. What's that TV show? No one wants this. This is the NFL version of that.
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, man, it serves, I guess, some of the Pittsburgh fans right, for those who wanted Mike Tomlin out of there so quickly. When you look at, the statistics, the wins in regular season, playoff wins, all of those numbers are similar with Mike Tomlin as they are with Mike McCarthy. This is the thing. Mike Tomlin's a different guy. These are two different guys. Now, can Mike McCarthy, can he lead a locker room? Fully these guys, like, can he get a team with Mason Rudolph to the playoffs? Can he get, teams like that where you're not sure what the quarterback is? Can you get that winning record with these teams? That'll be the question. And if you're the Steelers, I would have felt like, if you were interested in guys like Clint Kubiak, Chris Shula, defensive coordinator for the Rams, if you were interested in those guys, I feel like if you're the Steelers, you could have possibly waited on them and still gotten a guy like Mike McCarthy. So that's my whole thing here. But good luck to the Steelers. Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow are still in that division.
Well, speaking of Lamar Jackson, and Lawrence, I'll stay with you, given I see you as a Ravens fan. Even though you're allegedly a Falcons fan, I see your allegiance more to Lamar Jackson and co. A more exciting hire, Jesse Minter, defensive coordinator for the Chargers, who I think got a lot out of, arguably less in terms of defensive talent. And what do you think, Lawrence, of pairing a defensive coach with Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm seeing like a lot of people that are. It's like, what part of the Ravens where did they struggle down the stretch? Where did they struggle in the beginning of the season? They had a nice little 5-game stretch in the middle of the season where the defense kicked it up a little bit, but seeing Aaron Rodgers just light up that Ravens defense in week 18, only to see Aaron Rodgers fold up next week against the Texans, was probably enough for them to say, hey, let's bring us in a defensive guy, because the Ravens, speaking of talent, they have that. Obviously, you got Kyle Hamilton at the safety. You got the defensive tackle that was hurt for the season, so you were missing some guys here, but you still had Roquan Smith. Look, you get a good offensive coordinator, and Lamar's going to do what Lamar's going to do. He's proven that throughout his career. He won an MVP with his top receiver being Willie Snead. So get the defense right, and you should be able to figure it out with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson there. So, I wasn't so like, oh, he got to have an offensive guy. Like, you got an offensive guy. It's Lamar. And if you brought in Jesse Minter, the Ravens owner, Steve Bisciotti, said, hey, we want to know what Lamar thinks. So I would guess that Lamar is like at least somewhat cool with this if they made this hire. And Jesse Minter, he's been on the Ravens recently too.
Yeah, it's going to depend on the offense coordinator here, but yeah, I mean, shout out like Willie Snead just catching strays as randomly.
Wow.
Poor Willie
Miles
Snead.
Boykins too.
Yeah, exactly. I will say this though, as long as we're talking sort of Ravens, I do think they needed sort of a change of pace, somebody different in the locker room, obviously. But for all the hailing of John Harbaugh, we talked about this when Harbaugh got hired. Like, what's the difference between John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy? John Harbaugh gets a $100 million deal with the Giants. Mike McCarthy widely panned, and I'm one of them, for taking the job with the Steelers. And yet, look at the records. Those guys are basically the same as well. Like, there's not a big difference between John Harbaugh and Mike McCarthy. That's not an endorsement of McCarthy, by the way. But so I do think Jesse Minter going to, like, for our purposes, it all depends on the coordinator. But Lamar's going to be able to produce points, whoever is the guy, whoever is coaching this. And I do think that Minter, if he brings some discipline to this entire organization, I think that'll help, because I think that was the that's what it sounds like from people I've talked to that Lamar needs. He needs somebody that can hold him a little bit more accountable.
When we come back, pick up lines, our favorite bets for the Super Bowl. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code FFHH when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
Oh, the crown is yours.
Crown is yours.
Yep. Crown is absolutely yours. All right, pick up line, Lawrence. What do you got for us?
Look, Matthew, TreVeyon Henderson, we talked about him earlier, having more opportunities in the Super Bowl. 20 rushing yards. That's it. That's at plus 108 there, right? We know he didn't get it in Denver, but we talked about this last week. We knew it was going to be a Ramondre Stevenson game. Then we saw the weather, definitely a Ramondre Stevenson game. But in 4 previous games before that, he's easily hit this number. And in 2 of those games, he just outright destroyed it. So 20 rushing yards in pretty old Santa Clara, California at plus 108 for TreVeyon Henderson.
Okay, very good, Lawrence. A lot of big names in the Super Bowl: Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Sam Darnold, Drake Maye, Stephon Diggs. So let's talk about Big Mac Daddy, Mack Hollins, who has quietly emerged as a very important part of this offense, Matthew. So my bet is Mack Hollins over 28.5 receiving yards. Why? Well, he's gone over in 6 of the past 7, and he hasn't just gone over. He has obliterated this number. He's averaging 55 receiving yards over those 7 games. The line is 28.5. A lot of those games, as we say, these 3 playoff games, the Patriots haven't really needed to throw. And he missed the first 2, but they didn't need to do much against the Broncos, and he still goes for 51 receiving yards. I think that Maye will have to throw in a game where he is approaching a 5-point underdog. And coming off IR, Mack Hollins yesterday, only Kayshon Boutte played more snaps than Hollins at wide receiver, and that was 40 to Hollins' 39. So I think that Mack Hollins goes over 28.5 receiving yards in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree with you. Mack Hollins is weirdly one of my favorite players in the NFL. We've talked about him a decent amount over the years on the show. Like, one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Just, he's an interesting guy, but an awesome guy. And more importantly, to your point, Jay, he absolutely has become a big part of this offense as well. To your point, 51 receiving yards in a game in which they really couldn't move the ball. 28.5 seems really low. I know Lawrence loves his plus money bets, and I actually kind of like that bet. That does feel low for TreVeyon Henderson. He could get that in one run. But Jay, it is the Super Bowl. It is me and you in Santa Clara. One magical night. I am going home with you. So, Lawrence, as always, keep your phone on. I might see you up, when Jay and I are done. But Jay, you've picked me up successfully. Congratulations. So let's go with Mack Hollins over 28.5 receiving yards in the Super Bowl. We are at Santa Clara, so we're off for the rest of the week, but then we are live from Radio Row all next week with a ton of great interviews. For Jay and Lawrence, I'm Matthew. We will see you later. Peace out.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and Rotoworld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Rotoworld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.